the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable to you. Come, Holy Spirit, into our midst. Well, there's a lot of ground to cover in the gospel lesson for this morning, and I'm not going to try to cover it all. As a former Boy Scout, I should probably have been drawn to the last part of that passage. You know what the Scout's motto is? Be prepared, right? And that is what Jesus is certainly talking about here, being prepared for when Jesus comes at an unexpected hour. But, and probably to the disappointment of my former Scout leaders in our midst, I'm not going to do the first, I'm going to focus on the first part of this passage, especially the part where Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Now, of course, by doing so, I probably run the risk of disappointing many more than just Scout leaders, because what we're talking about here is money. Doesn't it seem like the church always talks, as of my years as a pastor, I've always been accused of talking too much about money or not enough about money. And it's curious that when Jesus talks more about money in the Bible and the gospel lessons than he does any other subject, even sex, even prayer. So actually, instead of using the M word, Jesus uses the word treasure, which I think makes my task a little easier this morning. Although I believe that talking about material possessions, talking about money, talking about things that we spend our money on, treasure has other implications. For instance, what comes to your mind when I ask you to think about what it is that you treasure most? My guess is the first things that come to mind are family, spouses, children, relationships, health, things that money can't buy. After those things may come material possessions like your house, or your car, or your boat, and maybe even less tangible things like freedom. The things that we treasure are the things that are more than just physical possessions, more than things that money can buy. So what does Jesus mean when he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also? It might be helpful if we replace the word heart with passion or love. Where your heart is where your energy, where your focus, where your passion will be. Where your heart is where you will place your priorities in life. So if you treasure your family, then you're going to focus your energy, you're going to focus your time, your passion on them. You're going to spend effort supporting them at all costs. If you treasure your car, like my wife is accusing me of the last truck that I just purchased, then you're going to be on the driveway washing it every other every other day, changing the oil every 3,000 miles. So again, it's important. The important question for us to consider today is, what do you treasure? What is your heart dedicated to? Now, I think these words come with a challenge, because my guess is that we all fall into the trap of treasuring material things. It's the nature of consumerism. When we buy something, that product lays claim on us. It lays our heart on us. Let me give this a test. For those of you who have computers, who are Mac users? All right? Who are Windows users? All right? Now, my guess is that you cannot convince a Mac user that Windows are better, right? Or vice versa. In fact, if you bought a Mac, the next time you purchase a computer, you're also going to buy a Mac, right? That brand lays claim to you. This summer, my son was visiting, and I mistook his computer for my computer. I opened it up, and it was a Mac. I thought my computer had a virus or something. We're dedicated to the brands that we buy because we've researched them, we've looked into them, and we want to believe that we bought the best brand available. So the nature of consumerism, that we are convinced by brands. They lay hold to us. I remember in my first congregation, I was at a farm auction, and they were selling off equipment, and a member of the congregation was standing next to me who was a farmer, and they were bidding on a tractor. And he said, wow, that tractor is really going for a good price. And I said, well, why don't you bid on it? And he said to me, well, it's not the right color. Farmers might know what I mean by that one. So Jesus' words invite us to take stock in what we treasure, to reevaluate our priorities, to stop and consider what is really important in our lives, because our heart follows what we treasure. Often we get it backwards. We think that if we change our heart, that it's going to change our priorities in life, but Jesus seems to be saying that what we treasure, our heart follows that. So we can change our priorities, and in changing our priorities, we change the focus, the direction of our heart. I think these words come with a promise. Let's ask the question a little bit differently. Instead of asking yourself what you treasure, ask yourself what you want to treasure. Or maybe even what kind of person you want to be. What in your life needs to be changed? What in your life is causing you problems? What behaviors, what attitudes do you want to change? Because Jesus seems to be implying here that we do have some control over our heart. Jesus seems to be saying that the way we make our heart change is the way to change what we treasure. Heart follows treasure. I believe that the true treasure Jesus asks us to follow here, the treasure that is where we find our well-being, the treasure where we find the well-being of others, is that in that command where Jesus says, what's the greatest command? To love one another as God loves us. Jesus, just before Jesus says these words about treasure, he talks about selling possessions, talks about selling treasures, giving alms, giving assistance to those in need. Jesus challenges us to move from self-centeredness, from pursuing our own treasures and satisfying our own wants and needs, to pursuing the things that God treasures, the things that Jesus treasures. How does Jesus sum up those treasures most? As I just said, love your neighbor as yourself. I read recently a story about a woman who took Jesus' words to heart, literally. She started by giving bigger tips to people who were serving her in restaurants. But this led her to ask questions about why people struggle with working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. She started asking questions about the businesses she supported and whether her heart followed her treasure in a way that aligned with her values, aligned with Jesus' values. Values like fair and safe working conditions, protecting the environment, giving equal pay to females and males, investing in communities where they do business. Now, from that simple act of thinking about tipping and helping people who serve her, she begins thinking about where she puts her money in order to change things on a bigger level, not just at the restaurant table. I started today by asking you to think about what you treasure most. Now let me ask you, what do you think God treasures most? For those of us who are parents, my guess is that your children are at the top of the list. And wouldn't you think that that would be the same about God? That what God treasures most was his son Jesus. And in fact, if heart follows treasures, where do you think God's heart is? It's in us. Because God sent his only son into the world so that we might have God's love, that we might have God's heart, that we might have God's treasure in us. Each one of us today are treasured by God. Each one of us receive God's passion, God's heart, God's love, God's focus. And that is why it is God's good pleasure to give us what we need. God's pleasure to see that we lack nothing. God's pleasure to love us unconditionally. If heart follows treasure, and God treasures us, therefore God's heart is in us. A heart and a love that we are called to share with one another. Amen.